Welcome to Healing You with our host Gloria Lybecker, and I'm Vanessa Harris. Today we're going to explore the topic of relationships and how they impact us throughout our lives.
Yeah. Relationships are such a fascinating subject for me because there's so many different kinds of relationships that we end up experiencing in our lives. And yet I know as a younger person, I really wasn't aware of that, of the differences of the relationships. But doing it a little different today, I'm wondering if you might be willing, if you stop and you just consider when you were a younger person, who in your life stands out to you that really was a positive influence in your life? Made a difference for you?
Wow. When I was really young, I think that one of the really positive influences for me was my grandmother. She was just always really positive and fun and warm and caring and laughing, and I had a very close relationship with her. It's interesting when you just mentioned about the different kinds of relationships, because for me and for a lot of people, I think that brings up the word relationship, instantly people think of romantic relationships. And when I hear the word relationship and then you frame it, when I was really little, it puts a whole different context around it, and it makes me think of all those connections and bonds, I guess, that I developed with people when I was young. So probably my first really positive relationship that I think of was my grandmother. And then it's interesting because as I got older, in my teens, I had a lot of really important relationships that just still impact me to this day, and where I will actually think about those people and think, what would they do in this situation, or how would they approach this. So it was almost like I had a whole bunch of other surrogate aunts and uncles or even grandparents. And they're people who are like grandparents to my children now.
Yeah. And so what role did they play, or what role were they in your life? How did you come across these people?
Through school and work connections. So some of them were teachers in my high school, who I then developed friendships and relationships with outside of the school area through either employment, me working for them in different outside areas, or friends, parents of my friends.
Yes. Yeah. When you think about a specific teacher when you're in high school, what were the kinds of things they did that really stood out to you, that caught your attention?
Wow. I think the teachers were a little different in my time than what they are these days. So I think the things that really stood out was their willingness to just be there and support me, and listen to me and hear me, and actually look after me. Like I had two different relationships where it wasn't just a mentoring role where they would talk to me and share their own experiences, or they didn't give me advice. They would ask me what I wanted to do, or they would share or they would reflect things back to me. So I didn't have that feeling of being suffocated or controlled or told what to do. And there was no expectations. I guess that's one of the biggest things. There was a freedom there. But I used to always be really mindful of their opinion and wonder what they would think, and want them to approve of things, but never be fearful that they would not approve, if that makes sense. And they would just step outside of themselves where they didn't need to. I remember one of them just coming in one day when I got a speeding fine and saying, here's some money to pay for your fine. And I was like, but that's my fine, it's not your responsibility. And they said, yeah, but we know that you're really struggling, and we can see you're really stressed about it, and we don't want you to worry about it, and we know that you were in a rush and it was an unusual situation because you were in a foreign area, and we just want to do this for you. And another teacher actually asked me pick them up and give them a lift on the weekend down somewhere. And I just did that without thinking, because we used to have a reciprocal relationship where I would give them a lift to school, and so that their wife could take the car. And then they just drive me downtown, and can you just drive in here? And he's like, oh, I'm going to get new tyres for your car. I think these people probably just wanted to be there for me because they knew that I was living on my own, away from home. They took on a caring role. But what I really got was that I felt valued, I think. I think that's probably the thing that I just, and a sense of belonging. And it's, I want to say the word attachment, but it sounds odd. A connection, I think. It's a connection.
Yeah, it is.
And modeling.
Like
The healthy model of how to love people and just care about people in your environment. I carry that through with myself. That's how I look at all the kids I see today. I feel like it's like I want to pay that forward to other people.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm hearing that really stands out to me, or actually several of the things that stand out to me, is that there was warmth and care, and there was deep listening without judgment or expectation for you to do something particular, but really interested in you as a being, interested in your thoughts and your feelings and your experience. And then there's also the nurturance of wanting to contribute in your life in a way to allow you the freedom to continue to learn and absorb things in your life instead of worrying about all the responsibilities, especially as a teen. Because as you said, you were out on your own at a very young age. And so you actually attracted in other kind of parental figures, nurturing figures to mentor you and encourage you and support you as you continue to grow in life.
And they really have they had a huge impact on my sense of self, I think, and my well-being and who I am in the world. And they're all still there in my life, all the people who haven't passed on. But even the people who have passed on are still there. They're still there through their family connections that I'm still connected with, and just through, they're just still, yeah, I still feel them with me.
Yeah.
And I look at myself and other people in my family or other friends, and I think, we had similar experiences. What's the difference? And I feel like I had all of these extra relationships, supportive relationships around me that really have had a really positive impact.
So they're also, what I'm hearing then in these relationships is that they're really enduring relationships. They're not like a flash in the pan that they're just here for now and then they're gone and you never see them again. But they actually had long-lasting, enduring relationship with you that was reciprocated. Yeah. What I'm also hearing is that they came from maybe different walks in life, different times in your life, and yet there's a connection that happened that really, really clicked or really synced up together. There's kind of a knowing of one another, of the mutual value. Because what I'm hearing is just how much you value those relationships, and you also felt the experience of being valued, of being included and belonging and nurtured.
And and I think there's what you're saying. It's the endurance, but there was this consistency as well. And when I think about the different kinds of different aspects of different walks and paths in my life, I had one of my I think she was my boss, actually, like my superior at work, and then there was another person who I knew through a church youth group, and completely different people, completely different contexts, but they had a huge impact on me and my spirituality or my relationship and understanding of my connection and relationship with God, which I just didn't have available to me in other areas of my life. And that's been a really strong and grounding. And I know when I'm moving forward, when my children were young, I would often think, or even when my son would question me relentlessly about theological things, when he was 2, and I would just think, wow, this is like, he just had this incredible mind, the way that he would think. And I couldn't answer some of his questions. And I was like, oh, that might be a question for our friend Liz. I can't answer that one. So yeah, it was different parts of self and different needs, I guess, that got met by different people.
Yeah. So there's a growth and a development that happens through these relationships from the time we're very young, like with your grandmother being there. I know for myself, I'm actually in Alaska right now because I have a new granddaughter, and I've gotten to have the privilege of sharing being grandmother with the other grandmother, and we're taking turns coming up to nurture our granddaughter. And when we're really young, the greatest gift we have is love, right? And so if we're reciprocated in that love, it supports our circuitry within us to develop securely. And it also allows all of our emotions to flower and be open and to be accepted and to make sense and to matter. And so I know as a grandmother, when I look at my grandchildren, I can see so many things that I didn't know about when I was a parent. And then also when I look back at my own life as a child, I can now recognize where there were relationships that really supported me, as you've shared in your life, that encouraged me to continue to grow in spite of trauma or in spite of hardship. That there's been these touchstones of relationships through life that we can savor. And as we rest with them, even as you said, when you have relationships that have passed on, they're still with you. They still live on with you. And that's one of the greatest gifts that relationships bring.
I'm fascinated hearing how you were just explaining that love and that connection. And I think you mentioned the first 4 months is a really precious time. And it's just such a draining, as a mum, I know how exhausting physically that can be. And just having that extra energy there.
Nurturing energy, yeah.
Yes, really having that support would just be such a big difference. And so, yeah, I think I really missed that, having that support and energy when my children were small. Not having grandparents in close proximity or that were comfortable to take on that nurturing role. It's such a gift to have that. And I really appreciate that in my own grandmother. Like, I look back and I go, it's like, yes, that's where that bond came from. She was literally like my second parent. That's how she felt to me, like another parent.
And little ones, they do, to tend to them and to nurture them, it can be a lot of energy if you're not accustomed to it. And yet at the same time, there's such a reward that comes from the connection. So some of the things that are so important, no matter the age of the relationship, are all the nonverbal cues that we receive. That we are, that the relationships aren't intrusive. And they're not cold, uncaring. They're not disinterested. They're actually interested and curious and engaging, and yet they're respectful. They're not in. So the intrusive part can be really devastating to a child, no matter what age you are, as well as the lack of attention can be also debilitating and harmful. And so really important to recognize that the words that we speak and the body language that we use really does impact whoever's in our environment.
Mm.
And to begin to recognize, maybe as we walk down the street or we go to the store, we have a family gathering, to be more aware of how we are showing up in relationship with ourselves as well as with others. Because I know as a grandmother being here and caring for my granddaughter all day long, though her mother comes home to nurse her, that I need to be tending to my self-care in order to be resilient and have the energy to be loving and attentive in the way that I really want to. And so self-care is crucial to be modeled for our youth and what that looks like at different stages of our life as well.
Mm. I'm hearing you describing that, and I just remembered a really important relationship in my life. Like one of my main relationships is one of my aunties. And when I was nursing my children, I think my son was, it was only a few weeks in, and maybe he was 10 weeks old, and my back just got exhausted and went because he was a big baby. He was heavy. There was a lot of nursing, holding. He needed a lot of rocking. And I went to pick him up one day, and I just couldn't. My body just wasn't working. I was in excruciating pain. I could not lift my child, and I was terrified. How am I going to look after my own baby? I can't pick him up. And my aunt travelled 10 hours down, and she was there in the next room, and she would pick him up, and she would physically place him on my breast, and she would bring me cups of water, and she would take him and be with him and nurse him and take him for walk. And she would just do everything with him, and I pretty much just do nothing but other than feed him for that 2 weeks while I sort of got my body back. But I was with him, and but she did all of the actual physical caring, and they had such a strong connection at that time. And then there was years where we weren't as close and didn't see each other because of the distance between us. And they recently visited her when we were on holidays, and there's an instant connection, instant. It's just enduring, I guess, when you, yeah.
Well, I've had the pleasure of getting to experience a blossoming relationship with my daughter as I'm here with her daughter. And there's something that I've experienced and now I'm witnessing in my daughter's life that happens when we do have children, many of us. And each person also, I want to also acknowledge, can have a completely different experience. Well, I can speak to mine, which is similar to what I'm hearing you share, is just how when I come in to nurture my daughter and I attend to my granddaughter, but I'm also attending to things in the house. I'm doing things so that when my daughter's here, she can rest, because there's a lot that the body physiologically is doing to support another being outside of yourself. And so again, the importance of having self-care, and part of that self-care is allowing yourself to receive care from another.
Yeah.
And so there's been a bond that's been blossoming between myself and my daughter, and it's been beautiful because I think as we see our children, we start to see ourselves in our own lives in a new way. And that can be a real beautiful thing. So I'm looking forward to the years ahead as well in that way.
I'm really enjoying hearing that, because I know that there's different ways that people connect and different ways that people show their love. And sometimes those doing things for other people can be perceived as, oh, you're just wanting to get things done, you want things clean, or I've had friends who have complained about their own parents or their in-laws when they come over to help with the baby, and instead of actually being with the baby, all they do is clean the house. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh, that would be the best. I would love that. Because I actually don't mind. I'm happy to sit there and do this. If you can take care of all of that, that allows me to be present and just be here with the baby. It is just such an enormous gift. But to have that balance of all of that yeah, it would be just amazing. But yeah, it's incredible because it just depends on how we're looking at that. If we're looking at that as, oh, my mum's judging my house is messy and coming to clean it up for me because she thinks that I'm not neat enough, we're missing the whole gift of her nurturing us.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's been an opportunity to engage in conversations that we wouldn't have otherwise. And that's a part of the growth and development of our relationships, is having the courage to talk about the things we don't talk about, to actually engage the conversations and invite them, and then to see if there's reciprocation. So I've been enjoying that as well. And that's a big part of actually getting to know each other as people, instead of just, I'm the mom or the grandma. I'm a person, and I have a life that may be of interest to my daughter, and she's interested. So that's been quite fun as well. So I just want to encourage our listeners to, I guess, have the opportunity to begin to perceive their relationships with themselves, as well as their relationships with others in their life. And it can even be somebody, I know for myself, like a Sunday school teacher really impacted me. Or I remember when I got a job working in a high school, I worked at a rest home where elderly people were taken care of, and how some people there impacted my life to see people in a new way. So can be so many different gifts that we can receive when we begin to recognize them. So I'm inviting our viewers and our listeners to start to really notice more about what really impacts them, and where are the relationships that they can contribute to.
Yes. Yeah, that's the fun part, isn't it? They're not just what are you valuing in relationships and what's impacted you, but where can you make a contribution?
Well, as you did, you wanted to pay it forward with the children in your lives because that had impacted your life so much.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Nice thought to go away. Okay. Well, so one of the things I did hear you speak about a lot is the relationship with self, which I think is probably one of the most important parts of those relationships, and tuning into what's valuing you. And I think that's often a hard concept for people to grasp. I know it was for me, and when I was young, I used to hear people talk about getting to know yourself, and I think that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I was probably 10 years old. Like, of course you know yourself, just look in the mirror. But my experience of getting to improving my relationship and understanding myself and tuning into myself has definitely been through some of the workshops and webinars and circles that I've done with you. So is there anything in particular that you have available, or that listeners could look at as a resource, as a beginning to access? Start thinking about that?
Yeah, I would invite people to go to my website at healingyoursanctuary.com, and there are some free resources that they can download if they sign up for my newsletter. And there's also a course on there that's a preview, actually, of a course that I've drilled it down to 4 weeks. So it's an intensive. There's a lot of juicy stuff in there, and yet I highly recommend it. It's been really powerful for me in my life, and for those people that I've worked with have enjoyed it as well. There's also a link on there if people would like to reach out to me and get to have a free consultation to explore and see what might work best for them. Several people really like to get to have some one-on-one sessions or participate in a small group. And so I welcome that, for you to explore, people to explore what works best for them.
And hearing you say that, I think some of the most amazing relationships that I have in my life currently are the connections that I've made through connecting with you and on the circles. So yeah, that is something, a resource that I would definitely recommend. I didn't think of those relationships because we were talking about them when we were young, and they've come along more recently in my life, but they're definitely very powerful relationships. So until next show, we've had a bit of a break in the last few months with everything that's been going on, but I'm looking forward to catching up with you again next time.
Yeah, so much, Vanessa. It's
always great
to have these conversations.
And catch up with you in Alaska. It was lovely that you could make the space. Thank you.